Hello, everyone. It's Kon Kakanis from OneTeam IT. Welcome back to another episode of OneTeam TV. This was the follow-on from a previous iteration of Sundata TV, which you may have seen. The objective is to talk about IT issues at a business level and poke around some issues that you might not get on a website or in a presentation from a vendor or something like that. So today the subject is around artificial intelligence and specifically around some developments around IBM's Watson solution. And I've got great pleasure in introducing two guests today. I've got Sachin Khisti from Carrington and Associates in Sydney. Hi, Sachin. And I've got Liking Fo from IBM themselves, who's a subject matter expert on Watson. And I might just hand over to Sachin and Liking and ask them to introduce themselves to get started. Sachin?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kon. And first of all, congratulations for your new entity. Best wishes to your new force. Thanks for this opportunity to talk about Carrington and IBM together. So Carrington Associates has been around for 15 years. I'm the director of the company. We have operations in Australia, New Zealand, and in India. And we were one of the first IBM Watson partners. We started our journey a couple of years back. So it's been a long journey, few years, but we're really enjoying it and having a really good success in the last 2 years.
That's great, Sachin. Thank you. And Liking, welcome. Can we just have a little bit about your role and your background, please?
Thank you, Con. Congratulations on OneTeam IT. All right.
Thanks, mate.
My name is Liking. I'm with IBM Data and AI. Today, we're going to talk about Watson.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so the goal is that we'll spend half an hour or maybe a little bit longer. And we've got some talking points and we'll just be bouncing around our various thoughts on those questions. So I might start with Liking. Perhaps what I'd be curious to know, I think a lot of the audience might have seen bits and pieces about Watson or AI over the last 5 or 6 years since it first came to market. Can you give us a précis of where it's at in 2021? What does Watson look like in 2021?
Right, Con. A lot of you may know Watson is the artificial intelligence arm of IBM, and we are seeing Watson pervasive throughout our software portfolio now. Now, uniquely, I think we've done so. Think about the start of culmination of the artificial intelligence journey for IBM. And we started with way before Deep Blue. Then we have Deep Blue. Then we have Watson, right, playing in the Jeopardy game show. And then we have the latest one we had is a grand challenge we had, which is called Project Debater, which is what we put in artificial intelligence, our original Watson, and we enhanced it with a lot of research projects and put it in to look at playing against the best debater in the world. And we have gone from multiple technologies to a single Watson piece of solution. And then we have it pervasive enough in all our software portfolio. So we've gone a long way, right? And again, when we talk about pervasiveness within the software portfolio of IBM, we're not just talking about we'll flow into that nice segue was that it's not just on the cloud. It's going to be on-premise. It'll be in hybrid cloud mode. So we've come a long way since the day of Jeopardy, I would say. Very mature offering now.
Yeah, it's an interesting reference. I think most of us would have seen, especially if we're in the industry, would have seen some reference to the Jeopardy proof of concept, if you like. But the reality is that I guess what we're all interested in is real life and use cases today. So maybe I'll ask Sachin, as a consulting firm in that Watson AI space, what are you seeing as like typical use cases in the current environment where organisations are basically investing in Watson and AI and applying some results to their business?
Okay, before I answer that question, Kon, I'll take a step back kind of thing. It was like a few years back when we started Watson, everybody thought it's going to be the likes of big banks and the mining companies, and it's not for us kind of thing. Second thing, coming from IBM must be expensive. It's like 3 years program and all that. So there were a lot of myths about this overall AI. But what we realized quickly, that is not only meant for the big companies, but it's also meant for the smaller companies as well. Number two, the cost is not significantly high. In fact, it has come down. And the second thing is the product maturity as well. So we see today a lot of small to medium sized companies getting into the AI for various reasons, and especially during the COVID situation where the resources are not available in the market or the cost has gone up, and there are many reasons why you need to have an AI as a part of your offering for being a competitive in the business. We see that number of companies are going into that journey. So if you look at AI, what we see is typically chatbot and RP is your start of the program or your journey, and from there onwards you build a confidence because number of companies are still struggling. How is going to help me? Is it definitely meant for us, kind of thing? So the kind of use cases we see that contact center companies, they want to use chatbot for outside 9 to 5 to answer their question to their customers, or some of the queries, whether it's a call for inquiries or is a customer support and whatnot. Then we see number of companies is using it for training and development as well, cognitive audit and whatnot. So there are a number of use cases that we see happening in recent time.
Okay, thank you. I do recall in early days, it was almost like the entry price, as you say, was, I don't know, $400,000 or $500,000, and that was the perception in the market. But what I'm hearing you say is that you can approach it in a far more granular way, and you can start small with a small project, prove the concept, build the skills, show the ROI, and then you can expand the use cases in the organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we see, Con, is like nobody's willing to buy $1 million or $500,000 software these days and figure out what to do with that. They start with the journey. So where we help them with the design thinking workshop. So if you have a use case, nothing like it. If you don't have it, then we come up with an ideation program where we come up with some use cases related to your industry. And from there onwards, we build a proof of concept or minimum viable product. And what we do is typically between 4 to 14 weeks, we try to finish the project so that you have some tangible thing to work or explore. And then come a couple of common things like, can it scale? Is it secure? Can it integrate with our system? And yes, if you can achieve that, then this is fantastic. And what companies do, they don't spend like $100,000 depending on the use case, but you can do right from $5,000 to $50,000, a small pilot project. And then if you like what you see, then you go for a full-fledged solution. And that's how companies are trying and testing.
Okay, so you're seeing people getting up and running with some element or some usage within 3 months if they're motivated.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, well, look, let me ask you the opposite question. If it's so good, how come everybody's not using it?
I think, look, what we see is, that question I've been asking myself as well. There are quite a few factors actually. 20 years back, I was into offshoring and outsourcing business, right? So everybody was saying that, is it a right thing for our business? Okay, are we basically going to drop a lot of resources, firing people and all that? So number of questions were asked, and I see that AI is the same discussion today as well. Look, if I'm going to hire AI solution, that means I need to fire 5 people. It's not the situation like that kind of thing, right? So that's number one. Number two is, do we have a right data? Do we have a right use cases? So these are the typical questions that companies have. So where we come from is a consulting background in terms of, are you the right company for that? Is this a right use case for proper ROI and all that? And that's where we find the struggle actually. And companies don't want to take the risk of changing what's currently working for them. And second thing is always like, people are not comfortable with the change. We see that often. And that's where the AI is at the moment.
Yeah, no, it is a substantial change in mindset for how you either gain productivity or improve outcomes. Like, King, can I ask you what you see? What's stopping organisations who look at Watson and AI? What's stopping them going forward?
I think from my perspective, right, first off, the price point has gone significantly down. The one that's major challenge is there's this chicken and egg story where do I have enough data to train the AI, right? AI thrives on data only. So if you've got, and typically we have this discussion where I give an example of starting in a contact center. The first question we have is, do you have a contact center call script? If you have that script that's to use to train your contact center agents, that's data where we can ingest. So instead of going back to do I have can I start or how do I start? What's the barrier to entry? We typically ask a certain question, and design thinking by Sachin's team is absolutely amazing when it comes to this, right? So we go through the use case. Is there data? How do we refine the data and we train it? As long as you have some sort of documented data, whether it's housed in your enterprise repository or in a Word document, that is a place to start. And we're seeing more and more companies coming into the fray. Not so much of why don't I do it, but do I have sufficient data? Do I have enough data? If not, what do I do to gather more data? That's where design thinking comes in, and Sachin's team can help facilitate that to bring up more data, enough so that the data can be crunched by the AI system. So I think the misconception in the market is that it's AI in its data. I don't have enough data, right? That is easily circumvented once we understand the use case and we bring in design thinking methodology with Sachin's team to suss it through, and then we'll be at the starting point. And it don't need to be a all-encompassing, matrix kind of AI in a sense, right? An overlord AI is typical one or two instances, and you go out, right, and start building that basic data and adding layers and layers and layers to it, and that's where we gain a lot of benefits from there.
Okay, so the early market perceptions were that it's very expensive and you need huge use case and huge data. And what you're both saying is that the entry point from a cost point of view is low, but also the amount of data you need to ingest to do the training, the machine learning, is not ridiculous, and it's something that companies can swallow in small chunks. Okay.
Yep.
So can I add something on top of that?
Yeah, sure, mate.
So what we see initially, it was over marketed by everyone, all the vendors. So everyone thought that AI is a magic box. You can throw anything and you get everything, and for a dollar cost. So when we were showing something, we thought we would get a lot more than that actually, and probably within a weeks actually. So that was one challenge that company probably have very interested, but they have gone back saying that probably it's not the right thing for us. So I think overpromise was the one, definitely a problem. Second thing, we started seeing that the security, number of companies saying, what if it goes on cloud? What if it's not secure, kind of thing. So that's second thing what we see. And number of the third point that I've seen, that there are number of vendors are available, kind of thing. So which one do I choose? Which is the right one? Now, if there are 5 vendors offering the same thing, I don't have time and money to do the pilot project with 5 different vendors. So how do I choose the right one is also important. Okay. And the fourth thing that I see is the getting right skill sets. Do we have enough people or right people in Australia who can deliver the long-term solution? So that's been a challenge as well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to pick up on a couple of points that you both have made. One is about security. And like King, you passed by quickly that Watson's now available on premise.
Yep.
Now, I've been in the IBM community a long time, and I guess my perspective is the marketing might be a little bit better sometimes. That what you just said about Watson being available on premise is to me a fairly momentous announcement or offering. We're in a world where everything's cloud, or to use IBM's official terminology, it's hybrid cloud. Can you tell us, like King, a little bit about the Watson on-premise offering? What's the thinking behind making it available on-premise in a world where the direction or the tide is generally going in the opposite direction?
If you look at how we evolved Watson from the start, it was purely on cloud. Then it was a big boy on cloud, right? It's very heavy, chunky Watson. Then we've broken it into commoditized APIs for people to consume based on their use cases, right? Whether it's Watson Assistant for a chatbot, Watson Discovery for enterprise discovery, or voice agents, etc. And then now we are making it available purely on-premise, or in our term, hybrid cloud, post our Red Hat acquisition. Why are we doing this? Several items. We have realized that a lot of clients would like the AI system, right? And this is significant differentiator from my perspective, right? We work with major governments, we work with major enterprises. A lot of these enterprises have started or are on their journey to cloud. So they've got a bit of hybrid in both. So they are into cloud, but they get charged a lot when they're training the AI models on premise, because cloud providers charge them on the egress and ingress of data, right, to train the AI models. So they came to us and said, look, can we have our own AI instance on premise or in AWS where we house our data? So we made available with Red Hat OpenShift and containerized technologies to have our software being deployed on AWS, on Azure, or even on your on-premise infrastructure without compromising the codes, and allowing you to train it right next to where your co-location of your data. This allows a very fast training cycle, and there's no egress charge for our clients. And naturally, because it's housed within your firewall, if you choose to do so, it's secure under your InfoSec protocols, right? There's a firewall and whatever protocols you have. So we are the only vendor that made it available because on-premise, because our clients demanded in such a hybrid cloud world. If you check any other AI vendors, they will always say, put it on my cloud, because that's where our major number crunching is done. And this is several reasons, right? Because we are an enterprise AI, so we can house it, but we still containerize it to ensure that none of our codes are taken by the vendor, right? If you look at any other AI providers, there's a clause that says that we will train our AI based on your data, which is not the right way as well, because every enterprise have their own proprietary data, right?
Yep.
I'm in this world. Think about the hacks that's happening. Think about the ransom attacks. There's a lot of focus on security, and therefore we want our AI who's servicing our clients to be housed within our secured infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of demand on that, and we decided to look into our research tech and make it available on premise or in a hybrid cloud world.
Okay. So when Watson was first released, I guess, funnily enough, cybersecurity wasn't as big an issue as it is today. Data sovereignty, protecting the corporate assets. You're saying they're the customer demands that drove IBM to offer it in a hybrid model, including on-premise.
Yep.
And I guess the fact that it was built on a containerized platform made it easy to just decide how to deploy it.
Yep.
And then make it available to clients for that sort of on-premise context. Okay, Sachin, can I ask you, like, you know, in real, talking to your customers in Australia, how are they reacting to the news that you can actually deploy this AI solution in an on-premise environment?
Okay, so what we have seen traditionally, smaller companies or private companies didn't really matter to them, whether it's on cloud or on-prem kind of thing. But what we see is the public sector, number one, definitely they want to have it on-prem. Number two is, depending on the industry, for example, financial sector, insurance companies or healthcare companies where data is really important for them in terms of, they didn't want to put it on cloud. Now they have an option with the Watson on-prem that they can look at some of the AI services they have not thought about it in the earlier, can go on a journey with that. So we see that, in fact, we are working with the New Zealand government at the moment. It's a pilot project for 3 months, which has been done on cloud at the moment, but once they go into full-fledged production, they want to have it done on-prem. So that's sort of the shift that we see depending on the companies.
Okay, and I guess with my familiarity with the cloud model for Watson, your microservices that Liking talked about, the calls, that's really where the cost is. Once you've built the model and you've got it running, it's an ongoing cost. But I guess what you're saying is in an on-premise model, the costs are probably more front-loaded, and then you're not actually calling APIs and moving data around a lot. So the cost of ownership, that actually helps the cost of ownership, does it, Liking?
Yes. We actually look at how you're optimizing your usage, right? So I give an example. What Sachin said is true. A lot of times there'll be clients who want to pilot the projects on cloud, and when you go into production, it's on-premise. So it will help, because a lot of the cost will be upfront. So you smoothen it from a cycle rather than a steep slope growing up as your consumption goes up. You front load the cost and it goes tails down. So that's the and we optimize all the software codes, right, Sachin? Software code infrastructure to make sure you get the best performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we see, Kon, like during the pilot, the cost is very minimal because the usage is not that much. But once in the production, when people are starting using it, it goes up actually. So as an operational manager or finance, you would like to know what's my cost at the end of the year actually. So if they know that rough indicative, then that really helps. And this on-prem mod really helps them to minimize that costing if the volume is really high.
Okay. Can I ask you both if you've been in situations where before Watson was available on premise, where you had clients who were excited about the solution, they had a business case, they could see the ROI, but but the cloud thing was a showstopper. Like King, do you want to comment on that?
I think that's for sure, right? Especially with regard to our banks as well as some state governments and even federal governments, where you're doing workload that are very what you think would be highly secured customer data, because you have to train it with customer data, right? And during that training instance, you're very sure that you won't put it on cloud. So those circumstances will come out with what I call a gaffow moment. So they say, oh dear, we can't do it because InfoSec doesn't allow us, our protocols doesn't allow. And respectfully, we have to then, withdraw that capability because we couldn't offer it on premise, right? Now that's why the IBM invested, and this is a game changer for us to be able to put the AI onto your infrastructure where you want it, next to your data, secure, private. That to me is the number one game changer for us.
So the client's got full visibility and control over where their data goes, and the data's not leaving the building, basically.
Yep, for sure.
Okay. And Sachin, have you seen situations where the cloud thing stopped the deal in its tracks?
Yeah, absolutely. So 18 months back, we did a project for a healthcare company. So we worked with them in their New South Wales office. Everything was done well. Then I saw the Queensland head. And then what we found out actually that, okay, solution is great, but then they realized that they can't have the data in Sydney or other places. It has to be in Queensland. And they said, we can't have it on cloud. So we really lost that opportunity 18 months back because they said it has to be on-prem. Otherwise, we won't go ahead with that one. So because it was a healthcare, the data regarding the not only their own customers, but also the third party, they didn't want to take any risks on that.
Okay. And what you're both saying is, what I've heard is that Watson's the only AI solution that's available to be deployed in this on-premise methodology. Is that right?
Yep.
At this point in time. At this point in time.
At this point in time, of course, technology.
Yes.
Yep. At this point in time, we are the only one who can do it on-premise or in any cloud you want.
Okay. And just for the record, we're talking about August 2021. If anyone comes back. That's great, guys. So I know there'll be some people watching who'll be interested in the practicalities of standing up an environment on premise. Did I hear you, like King, say before that you run it in an OpenShift stack? Is that right?
Yep. We are the whole containerized stack is based on Red Hat OpenShift. You'll be able to look at it once you have that capability. So containerized, fully privatized. Yeah.
And I know that there are some applications or solutions in market that are on their way to being containerized, and parts are containerized and parts are not. Are we talking about, fair income fully containerized here?
Yep. Fully containerized fair income, like the LG expression.
So the lab knows what fair income means and they've certified it. That's great.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, and Sachin, have you stood up any on-premise Watson as yet with Carrington?
We have two discussions going on at the moment. So like I said, in New Zealand, definitely one at the moment on cloud, going into that one. So we'll get to hear in October. And the second discussion is around the insurance company, rather not insurance, superannuation company. So definitely they are interested on-prem.
Okay. I'm sort of conscious of everyone's time, so I'll probably start heading towards some concluding sort of questions. Sachin, let me start with you. If assuming that I was a prospective client, a CFO or general manager of marketing or something like that, and I was skeptical about AI, what would you say to me to help me get an open mind about AI?
Number one, what is it holding you back to explore the AI? So when we talk to the financial, is the cost for them. If we talk to the CIO, CTO, is basically the security, the scalability, and whatnot actually. But what I really find is important is the ROI. If you see that ROI to the customer, they're really getting into it actually. It's not only the cost benefit, but it's like more than that as well. Like it's 24/7, less human errors and whatnot actually. So that's where we see that as soon as we talk about ROI, and if I can talk about the use case related to your industry, to your business, that gets them really excited actually. And then slowly things work out from there onwards. So what we do, we tackle to all the common challenge that you face? Is it security? Is it the costing? Is it long-term running and whatnot? And from there onwards, we work from there. And we also talk about some of the successful projects, not only in Australia, but elsewhere as well. And mostly Australian companies would like to know what's happening in Australia. And that's where we demonstrate that it's been done. It's not that something that you want to explore from the scratch.
Okay. And I see, I know a lot of clients look for a payback within 12 months on a project. Is that something that you're generally finding, that you can offer a payback inside 12 months for an AI project?
Absolutely. So we are working with one company at the moment. So they are looking at hiring 3 more people in their operational background department, and they found that the cost is really high and they can't get resources. So they start thinking about AI, and we did design thinking workshop with them. And what we found out that some of the tasks, or most of the tasks, can be completely done by AI, and probably there will be 2 or 3 processes can be done by manually. And then we did the ROI for them in terms of orange to orange comparison with the cost of running the show and also doing, and they found that this is much better. So they are finding the ROI within 6 to 7 months, not even 12 months.
Okay.
And this is like 24/7, and the people take leave, but the board doesn't. So that's where they see a lot of values outside the financial benefits.
Okay. And like King, can I ask you that same question about what sort of conversation do you have with somebody who's a skeptic?
I think the first part of the conversation will be on the use case, right? We are always obsessed about the use case. So once we figure out the use case that's applicable to the business, then we'll start peeling the onion. We're looking at driving business case and what data you have, but how are we going to train and the next expert to help? It's as good as training a knowledge worker next to the use case, right? The idea here is that we want to be able to drive as much value through the use of AI, or by incorporating as much knowledge worker knowledge functions, cognitive functions, and that's where we usually have a further discussion, right? Similar to what Sachin said, what I've seen in the market is a lot of times people want to only undertake a project if the ROI payback period is within 6 to 7 months, and we have successfully done that for a lot of clients. So literally, I have a library of case studies where I have 300 over use cases where people are doing stuff with AI across the world, and come and talk to us, right? Even though you might think that yours is a first of a kind, so there are risks involved in the first of a kind use case, you'll find that a lot of people are thinking along those lines or are already embarking on that journey. So if in doubt, my dad always tells me, if in doubt, ask. You have a mouth, right? So that's being drummed into me when I was young. Don't know, ask, right? Don't assume.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, if a message for, say, a CFO is a payback within 6 months is quite reasonable.
Yeah.
So then let me ask you another question, a different customer question. I'm a customer and I'm interested in I believe there's a benefit in AI, but I don't know where to start. What are the characteristics of a good first project for going down the AI path? Maybe Liking, I could start with you this time. So
what is your model? What are the competency of a business, right? So if you're talking to me, I'll give an example. If you're talking to me about I'm a freight company, I'm a logistic company, then the AI use case will be looking at your core competency, which is the optimization of your warehouse logistical assets. That's a use case for AI. If you are a retail company, I would say, how's your online channel, right? Look at where your biggest bang for buck is adopting AI, because I can guarantee you there will be a ROI. It's whether you can use that AI application in your core competency of a business that drives the value and sort of future-proof your business in the future.
Okay, thank you. Sachin, can I ask you the same question? Where do we start?
Yeah, exactly. So what we do is we typically start with this low complexity and high volume kind of thing, rather than going for a complex use case. So start small, see what the value you can get out of it actually, and then from there onwards you build a story from there. And what we see is that every business, like, we are working with a childcare company and they have a couple of use cases. So what we did actually, as a technology, what are the best easiest one that we can start with? From business point of view, they are deciding which is the most suitable for them, and that's how basically we are getting value out of it.
Okay.
So start small and grow from there, and low complexity is the first one that we typically target, which can have a better ROI.
So, and I'm guessing that if you're starting with low complexity and high volume of data, then getting the training data together is not a big deal.
Yeah.
Because they're simple
Absolutely.
records and you've got lots of them.
Correct.
Yeah.
The other question that I know comes up with AI is I guess, trust or confidence in the results. And I've been engaged with use cases where people are looking for like a 95% accuracy or trust or confidence in the outcome from the answer. What are you seeing is a realistic aspiration for the degree of confidence people can have in the work that the AI is doing? Sachin, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. So, look, again, I mentioned this point earlier that overpromise done by a lot of vendors. So if somebody says that we get 100% accuracy, definitely it's not something that none of us can believe it, right? And what we see is the value. If I do 60, 70%, still not really a big ROI kind of thing for you to go into that direction. What we see a realistic is between 85 to 90% or between 80 to 90%, depending on the use case and the industry. And I think that's probably a good success ratio, I would say.
Okay, liking, you're nodding. I take it you're agreeing with that.
Yeah, I think when you just base it, the instance based out of your training data, it should be around 75 to 80%. And then we then tweak it up with more testing and more refinement, right? So we put in reinforcement learning loops, etc. So we make it up to around 85 to 90%. Now, whether there is a bias, we have tools within the Watson toolkit to look into whether the training data bias that we reinforce, we check it before putting it in again for the reinforcement learning loop. So there are tools within the toolkit, within the Watson features for us to look into bias and slowly using that to tweak up the accuracy of the model. So I think if responsibly, we won't release it until it's 85 to 90% accuracy, right? This is to prevent a negative feedback.
Yeah, and I guess the other safety net with any of these applications is if the confidence in the result on the individual transactional question is not high, it can still go through to an agent or a consultant or an advisor to handle it. So you've knocked out 90% of the workload, but you still have the human expertise available for the complicated or not quite clear questions.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely. The human is always in the loop, right? So while we tweak the system, it's not 100%, AI fully automated.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I'm just going to wind it up now because we're basically running out of time. The subject today for the audience again, IBM Watson AI solution. We've been talking generally about that, use cases, justification, challenges, but I think more specifically, the other message to take out is that Watson is now available in an on-premise environment, and you can run it in an OpenShift stack on your own environment or on AWS or Azure or your cloud of choice, I guess. And that is a bit of I'm not sure if it's a game changer, but it certainly moves the dial on organisations looking at AI and deciding if it suits their context and their security requirements and their data sovereignty requirements, things like that. So if you would like to continue the conversation, if you've been watching and you're interested and you want to have more conversation about this, Sachin, Liking, and myself, our details are on the post that would have brought you to this video. Please feel free to reach out. We've either any one of us will be very, very happy to continue the conversation with you. We hope that you got something out of today's episode of OneTeam TV, and we look forward to you joining us the next time we have something to share. Thank you very much, and thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kon. Thank you, Liking.